The Galactic Council had existed for 12,000 years. 900 species lived under its rule, spread across 3 spiral arms of the galaxy. Every spacefaring civilization that had ever been discovered had joined the Council. Some joined willingly. Others needed convincing. But all of them, without exception, had signed the Integration Treaty. Ambassador Krelvosh of the Tethany Diplomatic Corps had been doing this job for 400 years. His species lived for nearly 1,000 years, and he had spent almost half of that time welcoming new civilizations into the galactic community. He had seen every type of alien species imaginable. Some had scales. Some had tentacles. Some existed as clouds of gas. Some were so strange that he could barely comprehend them. But they all had one thing in common. They all wanted what the Council offered. When the long-range sensors detected a new spacefaring civilization near an unremarkable yellow star, Krelvosh was not worried. This was routine. He gathered his diplomatic team, loaded the standard integration treaty into his ship's database, and set course for the system the natives called Sol. The journey took 3 weeks at faster-than-light speeds. Krelvosh used this time to study everything the Council knew about these new beings. They called themselves humans. They were bipedal, with soft skin and hair on their heads. They breathed oxygen and ate organic matter. Their civilization was very young by galactic standards, having achieved spaceflight only 200 years ago. Their technology was primitive, but functional. Their population was spread across their home planet and several nearby worlds and moons. Nothing about them seemed unusual. They were just another young species, ready to take their place in the galactic order. Krelvosh's ship dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of the Sol system. His sensors immediately detected a small fleet of human vessels approaching. There were 12 ships in total. Poot, each one crewed by galactic standards but clearly armed and operational. The lead ship hailed him. On his view screen appeared a human male with short brown hair and a broad smile. He wore a uniform of dark blue with golden symbols on his shoulders. Unknown vessel. This is Captain Daniel Hayes of the Earth Defense Coalition flagship Resolute. Please identify yourself and state your intentions. Krelvosh activated his translator and responded. Greetings, Captain Hayes. I am Ambassador Krelvosh of the Galactic Council. I come in peace, bearing gifts of friendship and an invitation to join our great community of civilizations. The human's smile widened. Well, that sounds promising. Welcome to our solar system, Ambassador. We've been hoping we weren't alone out here. The next several hours were spent in careful negotiation of protocols. Where should they meet? How many guards could each side bring? What atmosphere would the meeting room have? These details were tedious but necessary. Krelvosh had done this dozens of times before. Finally, they agreed to meet aboard a human space station orbiting the 4th planet, a cold red world the humans called Mars. Krelvosh brought 2 assistants and no guards. He wanted to show trust. The station was smaller than he expected, but clean and well-maintained. The humans had decorated a meeting room with flags and symbols that presumably meant something to them. Captain Hayes was there, along with several other humans in various uniforms. One of them stepped forward. She was a female with dark hair pulled back tightly from her face. Her uniform was different from Hayes, with more symbols and decorations. Ambassador Krelvosh, I am Commander Lisa Brennan, representing Earth's United Government. We are honored by your visit. Krelvosh bowed in the manner his research suggested, humans found respectful. The honor is mine, Commander. Shall we proceed to business? They sat around a large table. Krelvosh activated a holographic display showing the treaty document. He had given this presentation many times and knew exactly how to make it appealing. The Galactic Council offers humanity a great gift, he began. Membership in our community means access to technologies that would take you centuries to develop on your own. Faster than light travel, medical advances that can extend your lifespans, agricultural techniques that can end hunger forever, clean energy sources, materials and manufacturing methods beyond your current imagination. The humans listened with interest. Commander Brennan took notes on a small electronic device, Additionally, Krelvash continued, you would gain access to galactic trade routes. The wealth of 900 civilizations would be open to you. Protection, under council law, would shield you from any hostile species. You would never need to fear conquest or destruction. Sounds wonderful, said Captain Hayes. What do you want in return? Krelvash had been waiting for this question. The treaty requires certain standard provisions. Your military forces would be limited to defensive operations only. Expansion to new star systems would require council approval. Cultural integration programs would help your people adapt to galactic society. And of course, council oversight committees would be established on Earth to ensure smooth transition. The room was silent for a moment. The humans exchanged glances that Krelvash could not quite interpret. Commander Brennan spoke carefully. Let me make sure I understand. You want to limit our military, control where we can expand, change our culture, and place your people in positions of authority on our homeworld. These are standard provisions, Krelvash assured her. Every species accepts them. They are for your own protection and benefit. I see. Commander Brennan looked at Captain Hayes. Something passed between them. Then she turned back to Krelvash. Ambassador, we appreciate the offer. We really do. But we're going to have to decline. Krelvash felt his tentacles twitch in confusion. His translator must have made an error. I apologize, Commander. Could you repeat that? We're saying no to all of it. But this is unprecedented. No species has ever refused. Captain Hayes leaned forward, his smile now somewhat apologetic. There's a first time for everything, Ambassador. Look, we're not trying to be rude. We're grateful you came all this way. But we've read your treaty very carefully, and we just can't accept those terms. Krelvash felt a strange sensation he had never experienced in his long diplomatic career. Panic. Perhaps there has been a misunderstanding. The benefits far outweigh any minor restrictions. Your people would prosper beyond imagination. Our people have prospered before, Commander Brennan said calmly. We've survived ice ages, plagues, wars that killed hundreds of millions, something we call the 20th century, which was particularly rough. We've made it this far on our own. We're confident we can continue. The galaxy is dangerous. There are threats you cannot imagine, and we'll deal with them when they come. On our own terms, Krelvash tried everything. He offered modified terms, reduced oversight, extended transition periods, more favorable trade arrangements. The humans listened politely to each proposal, discussed among themselves briefly, and declined every single one after 6 hours of fruitless negotiation. Krelvash finally accepted that these strange beings were serious. They truly intended to refuse membership in the Galactic Council. I must return to the Council and report this development, he said finally. They will not be pleased. Commander Brennan nodded. We understand. Please tell them that we mean no disrespect. We simply value our independence. We hope we can still have peaceful relations, just not under the terms you've offered. Captain Hayes escorted Krelvash back to his ship. At the airlock, the human extended his hand in what Krelvash had learned was a gesture of friendship. There's no hard feelings, Ambassador. Maybe someday things will be different. Krelvash did not know how to respond. He shook the human's hand and boarded his ship in silence. The journey back to Council space felt much longer than 3 weeks. Krelvash spent most of it trying to compose his report. How could he explain this? How could he tell the most powerful governing body in the galaxy that a species of primitive bipeds had looked at their generous offer and simply said no? When he finally arrived and delivered his report, the emergency session that followed lasted for 3 standard days. Nothing like this had ever happened before. The Council had no protocols for dealing with a species that simply refused to join, and somewhere in the Sol system, humanity continued on as if nothing had happened, completely unaware that they had just thrown the entire galaxy into chaos, the grand chamber of the Galactic Council was the largest enclosed space ever constructed by any known civilization. It could hold representatives from all 900 member species at once, with room to spare. The ceiling was so high that clouds sometimes formed near the top. Artificial gravity kept everyone comfortable regardless of their homeworld's conditions today. Only the High Council was present. 17 of the most powerful beings in the galaxy sat in a circle, their seats adjusted to accommodate their various body types. Some breathed air. Some breathed methane. One existed partially in another dimension and appeared only as a shimmering outline. But they all shared the same expression of complete disbelief as they listened to Ambassador Krelvosh finish his report. Hi, Chancellor Morveth of the Silthuri hegemony had ruled the Council for 6 centuries. Her species resembled tall, thin humanoids with skin that glowed with bioluminescent patterns that shifted with her emotions. Right now, those patterns flickered rapidly between blue and purple, indicating profound confusion. They refused everything. She asked for the 3rd time. Everything, Krelvosh confirmed. He stood in the center of the circle, feeling very small despite his considerable size. I offered modified terms. Reduced oversight. Extended transition periods. Better trade arrangements. They were polite throughout, but their answer remained the same. Delegate Vrax of the Corthoni Collective made a sound like grinding metal. His species was insectoid, with armored carapace and multiple limbs. They had been warriors before joining the Council, and they still thought in military terms. Then we proceed to Phase 2, Vrax said. Economic pressure. Deny them access to galactic markets. Block their trade routes. Isolate them completely. They will reconsider within a generation. Perhaps sooner, Krelvosh hesitated. I suggested as much during our negotiations. Their representative, Commander Lisa Brennan, laughed at the suggestion. She said they had managed without galactic trade for their entire existence and saw no reason why that would change. Absurd, Vrax clicked. No species can develop independently at any reasonable pace. The resource requirements alone would take centuries to gather without access to established supply chains. Science Director Yelmoth raised a thin appendage for attention. His species were the Veluxi, beings of pure intellect who had evolved beyond the need for physical bodies. He existed as a consciousness housed in a mechanical shell. When he spoke, his voice came from speakers distributed around his floating form. I have been analyzing the data from Ambassador Krelvosh's mission. The human system is unusually resource-rich. They have multiple gas giants suitable for fuel harvesting. Their asteroid belt contains abundant heavy metals. Their outer system has frozen bodies rich in water and organic compounds. He activated a holographic display, showing the Sol system in detail. More critically, they have already established mining operations throughout their system. Their industrial capacity is remarkable for a species that achieved spaceflight only 2 centuries ago. They are not dependent on external resources. Chancellor Morveth studied the data carefully. Her bioluminescent patterns slowly shifted to a deep red that indicated serious concern. What about their military capabilities? General Vexarn of the Combined Fleet answered. He was a massive being, nearly 3 meters tall, covered in thick scales that could deflect small arms fire. His species, the Draconeth, had been conquered by the Council 8,000 years ago. They had been so impressed by their defeat that they had become the most loyal military servants of the Council ever since. Their ships are crude, Vexarn rumbled. Slow by our standards, poorly shielded. Their weapons are effective but limited in range. In a direct confrontation, our forces would destroy them easily. Then perhaps a military demonstration is in order, suggested Delegate Vrax. The chamber fell silent. Military action against a non-aggressive species violated 17 Council charters. The Council prided itself on peaceful integration. They had not engaged in warfare for over 3,000 years. But those charters assumed all species would eventually accept integration. No one had ever planned for a species that simply said no. Chancellor Morveth spoke carefully. What exactly are you proposing? General Vexarn understood the politics involved. Not warfare. A demonstration of force. We position a fleet in their system. Show them the power differential. Let them see what they would be facing if they continue to refuse. Nothing overtly hostile. Simply a reminder of reality. That seems reasonable, said Trade Minister Velkorath, a being who resembled a floating jellyfish. Once they see the size of our fleet, they will surely reconsider. Elvash felt he should speak up. With respect, I spent considerable time with these humans. I am not certain that a show of force will have the desired effect. What do you mean? Asked the Chancellor. They have a quality I have rarely encountered. Commander Brennan spoke of their history with great pride. Wars that lasted for generations. Conflicts that killed hundreds of millions of their own kind. They seem to view these tragedies as evidence of their strength rather than their weakness. I believe they would rather fight and die than submit to external control. General Vexarn made a dismissive sound. All species believe that until they see a real fleet in orbit, trust me, Ambassador. Once they understand the true scale of our power, they will become much more reasonable. The Council debated for another full day. Various approaches were suggested and rejected. Economic pressure was deemed too slow. Cultural infiltration was impossible without some level of cooperation. Diplomatic isolation would only strengthen the human position that they did not need the Council in the end. They voted unanimously to proceed with the military demonstration. As the session ended, Councillor Yathani approached Ambassador Krelvash. Yathani was ancient, even by galactic standards, a member of a species that measured their lives in tens of thousands of years. He served as the Council's historian, rarely speaking, but always watching. You seem troubled, Ambassador, Yathani observed. I am. These humans concern me in ways I cannot fully articulate, perhaps because they remind you of something.
Upslot?
Krelvash turned to face the old historian. What do you mean? I have been reviewing our archives. Do you know what happened to the species that built the Council 12,000 years ago? The Founders. They transcended physical form, according to legend. They became beings of pure energy and departed for higher dimensions. Yathani made a sound that might have been a laugh. That is the official story. The truth is somewhat different. The Founders were very much like these humans, stubborn, independent, unwilling to submit to any authority but their own. They built the Council not to unite species, but to control them, to ensure that no other civilization would ever become powerful enough to challenge them. What happened to them? They encountered a species even more stubborn than themselves. A war followed. Both sides were destroyed. The Council survived only because the remaining species feared the alternative. Yathani paused. I have studied many civilizations, Ambassador. I have seen this pattern before. Species that value freedom above all else cannot be conquered. They can only be destroyed. And the cost of destroying them is usually higher than anyone expects. Krelvash felt a chill pass through his tentacles. What would you recommend? I would recommend genuine diplomacy. Not integration. Partnership. Treat them as equals, rather than subjects. The Council would never agree to such terms. Yathani agreed. They would not. Not yet. But they may change their minds after General Dexarn's demonstration. You believe it will fail? The ancient historian turned and began to float away. I believe these humans have been preparing for this moment for a very long time. They knew we would come eventually, and they planned accordingly. Krelvash watched him go, feeling more troubled than ever. Across the galaxy, General Vexorn was already assembling his fleet. 40 of the most powerful warships in existence would soon be heading for the Sol. System and humanity waited. General Vexarn stood on the bridge of the dreadnought Eternal Judgment and felt supremely confident. His ship was 3 kilometers long, bristling with weapons that could crack a planet's crust. Behind him flew 13 more vessels, each one capable of devastating an entire civilization. This was the largest fleet the Council had deployed in over 3,000 years. The humans had no idea what was coming. The journey to the Sol system took 4 days at maximum faster-than-light speed. Vexarn used this time to review everything the Council knew about human military capabilities. Their ships were small and slow. Their weapons were primitive. Their fleet numbered only 12 vessels, according to the latest intelligence. It would be like comparing a swarm of insects to a pack of predators. When the fleet dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of the Sol system, Vexarn expected to see panic. He expected desperate communications, pleas for mercy, perhaps an immediate surrender. The humans would realize their mistake and beg to sign the treaty instead. His tactical officer made a sound of confusion. General, I am detecting significantly more ships than expected. Dexter moved to the sensor display. His scales tightened against his body in surprise. How many? 38 confirmed combat vessels? Possibly more concealed behind the larger planets. It was 3 times more than intelligence had predicted. But even so, it was still less than what he had brought. Their fleet is still smaller than ours, and their ships are inferior. This changes nothing. His communications officer spoke up. General, we are receiving a transmission from the human fleet. On screen, human male appeared. He had gray hair and a calm expression that showed no fear whatsoever. His uniform was covered with symbols and decorations that marked him as a higher-ranking officer. General Dexarn, I'm Admiral Kevin Monroe of Earth Defense Coalition. Welcome back to our solar system. Dexarn was surprised that the human knew his name. Admiral, I trust you understand the purpose of this demonstration. I do. You're here to intimidate us into signing your treaty. The human's expression did not change. I have a counter-demonstration, if you're interested. Before Dexarn could respond, his ship's sensors began screaming warnings. Red lights flashed across every console on the bridge. His tactical officer's voice was sharp with alarm. General, we are detecting massive power signatures across the system. Weapons platforms coming online. Hundreds of them. No, thousands. Dexarn stared at his display in disbelief. Across the Sol system, hidden platforms were revealing themselves. They had been concealed in asteroids, on moons, in orbit around planets, even drifting in the empty space between worlds. Each one was armed with weapons that his sensors could not fully identify. It's impossible, he breathed. These installations would have taken decades to construct. Admiral Monroe's voice came through the speakers again. 2 centuries, actually. We've had a lot of time to prepare. You see, General, we always knew that whoever we met out here might not be friendly. We hoped for the best, but we planned for the worst. The tactical display updated continuously as more and more installations came online. The numbers were staggering. The humans had turned their entire solar system into a fortress. Our philosophy is simple, Monroe continued. We don't want war. We're not aggressive. We have no interest in conquering anyone. But we will not be intimidated, and we will not be conquered. If you attack us, you will win eventually. Your ships are more advanced. Your weapons are more powerful. But the cost will be higher than you expect. Much higher. Dexarn tried to calculate the losses. His fleet could certainly destroy the human installations. But how many ships would he lose in the process? 10, 20? More? And even if he won, what then? The humans had shown they were willing to prepare for centuries. They would rebuild. They would come back stronger. Admiral, surely you understand that continued resistance is futile. The Council has resources beyond anything you can imagine. Even if you defeat this fleet, we can send 100 more. Maybe, but can you afford to? How many ships are you willing to lose for a species that just wants to be left alone? Monroe leaned forward slightly. We've studied your council, General. We know you haven't fought a real war in 3,000 years. Your member species have become comfortable, soft. They've forgotten what it means to sacrifice everything for a cause. We haven't. The bridge was silent. Every officer was watching Vexorn, waiting for his orders. He was the greatest military commander the Council had. He had never retreated from anything, but he was also not a fool. What would you propose, Admiral? Simple. Go home. Tell your council that we are not a threat to them. We don't want their territory. We don't want their resources. We just want to develop at our own pace, make our own choices, build our own future. If they can accept that, we can have peace. Real peace, not the kind that comes from one side surrendering to the other. And if the council refuses, Monroe shrugged, then I suppose we'll be seeing each other again. But I hope it doesn't come to that. War is expensive, General. For everyone involved, Dexarn made his decision. It was the hardest thing he had ever done. His entire career, his entire identity, was built on the idea that he never backed down. But he had not survived 8,000 years by being stupid. Fleet prepared to withdraw. His officers obeyed without question, though he could see the shock on their faces. The great dreadnought Eternal Judgment turned slowly, ponderously, and began to move away from the Sol system. The other ships followed. Before he cut the communication, Vexarn spoke one more time. "Admiral Monroe, I will deliver your message to the Council. But you should know that I do not make policy. Others will decide what happens next." "I understand, General. Thank you for being reasonable." The screen went dark. Vexarn stood alone on his bridge, watching the human system grow smaller behind them. He had never experienced defeat before. It was an unfamiliar sensation. But even as he processed his failure, part of him felt something unexpected. Respect. These humans had done what no other species had ever done. They had looked at the power of the Galactic Council and refused to be afraid. They had prepared for this moment not for years, but for centuries. They had built a fortress around their home and dared anyone to try taking it. From them, the Council would not know what to do with such a species. Their entire system was built on the assumption that everyone could be convinced or coerced into joining. Humanity did not fit into that system. Vexarn wondered what would happen next. Economic sanctions. Further military pressure. Diplomatic isolation. None of those options seemed likely to work against a species this determined. Perhaps. The old historian Yathani had been right. Perhaps the Council would need to try something completely new. Or perhaps this was the beginning of the end. Perhaps humanity was the crack that would eventually shatter the entire galactic order. The Sarn had seen empires rise and fall over his long lifetime. He knew that nothing lasted forever, as his fleet entered faster-than-light travel. Leaving the Sol system behind, General Vexarn found himself thinking about something Admiral Monroe had said. War is expensive. For everyone involved, he had a feeling that the Council was about to learn just how expensive some wars could be. The news of General Vexarn's retreat spread through the Galactic Council like wildfire through dry grass. For the first time in 3,000 years, a Council fleet had backed down without firing a shot. The implications were enormous. Emergency sessions became a daily occurrence. Chancellor Morvith barely slept, her bioluminescent patterns permanently stuck in shades of anxious purple. 17 sessions had produced nothing but arguments and accusations. No one could agree on what to do next. "This is a disaster," Trade Minister Velkaroth announced at the 18th session. Word is spread to every corner of the galaxy. Species that have been loyal members for millennia are now asking questions. They want to know why the humans are allowed to refuse membership when they were not given the same choice. Those species chose to join willingly, Delegate Varax insisted. The humans are an anomaly. A mistake. It's an anomaly that has just humiliated the most powerful military force in existence. General Vexarn stood at the center of the chamber, enduring the criticism with rigid dignity. He had offered his resignation 17 times. Each time, the Council had refused. They could not afford to lose their most experienced commander, especially now. "The humans did not defeat us," he said carefully. "They demonstrated that defeating them would cost more than we were willing to pay. There is a difference." "A difference without meaning," said Velkrath. "The result is the same. Other species see weakness." Ambassador Krelvosh raised a tentacle for attention. "There is more concerning news. The humans have begun trading with non-council species." The chamber fell silent. This was a new development. "Explain," Chancellor Morvith demanded. "Our intelligence network has been monitoring human activities. In the 10 months since General Vexarn's withdrawal, they have established trade relationships with the Freehold of Drexy, the nomad clans. In several of the exile worlds, those are minor powers, Delegate Vrax dismissed. What could they possibly offer? Technology exchanges, raw materials, industrial partnerships, and most importantly, no integration requirements. The humans offer fair contracts with no demands for cultural change or political submission." The implications were clear to everyone. The Galactic Council maintained its power partly through control of trade. If the humans were offering an alternative, species might begin to wonder why they needed the Council at all. This is deliberate destabilization, Chancellor Morvith said angrily. With respect, Chancellor, said a new voice. They are simply offering alternatives. Everyone turned to see Counselor Yathani enter the chamber. The ancient historian rarely attended council sessions. His presence suggested something important. I have been reviewing our archives, Yathani continued, floating slowly to the center of the chamber. I have studied humanity extensively. I believe I understand what makes them different from every species we have encountered. Then please enlighten us, said the Chancellor. Independence. True, genuine independence? Yathani activated a holographic display showing human history. Consider the circumstances of their development. They evolved on a planet with abundant resources. They were isolated from other intelligent species. They had no external threats to force them into cooperation. As a result, they spent millennia competing against each other.
Oh.
The display showed images of human wars, from primitive conflicts with simple weapons to devastating modern battles that scarred their planet. Every species we have integrated either was conquered by another species before us, or developed in systems with limited resources that made cooperation mandatory. Neither situation applied to humanity. They developed in complete independence, answering to no one but themselves. Surely all species value independence, Krelvosh observed. They value it abstractly. Humanity is willing to die for it. Athene paused. They have fought wars lasting generations over the concept. They have chosen extinction-level conflicts rather than submit to domination by other humans. What makes us believe they would react differently to us? The chamber was uncomfortably quiet. Science Director Yelmoth spoke up. What about long-term isolation? If we cut them off from all galactic contact, eventually they would need resources they cannot produce themselves. Ithani shook his mechanical head. That approach would require centuries to be effective, and assumes they would not find alternative solutions. Based on their history, they are remarkably adaptable. They would lick. Ely developed technologies we have not imagined simply to avoid depending on us. Then what do you propose? Chancellor Morvith asked. Her patterns were shifting between colors rapidly, indicating emotional turmoil. Something the Council has never attempted. Genuine diplomacy. Not integration. Partnership. Treat them as equals rather than subjects.
I'll delegate.
Brax made a harsh sound. Equals, they are barely spacefaring. Their technology is primitive. Their population is tiny compared to the Council's total numbers. How can we treat them as equals? Because they have something we have lost, Yathani said. Purpose, determination, willingness to sacrifice everything for their beliefs. Our member species have become comfortable under Council rule. They have forgotten what it means to fight for survival. Humanity has not forgotten. Chancellor Morvith studied the old historian carefully. You are suggesting we abandon 12,000 years of precedent. I am suggesting we adapt to new circumstances. The alternative is a conflict that will cost both sides dearly and achieve nothing. Even if we eventually defeat humanity militarily, we cannot force them to accept integration. They would resist forever. They would become a permanent wound in the body of galactic society, constantly bleeding resources and attention. Is that what the Council wants? The debate that followed lasted for 3 days. Every argument was made multiple times. Traditionalists insisted that showing flexibility would encourage other species to make similar demands. Reformers argued that the current approach had already failed and continuing, it would only make things worse. In the end, Chancellor Morvith made the decision that only she could make. We will attempt negotiation. Ambassador Krelvosh, you will return to the Sol system. But this time, you will carry no treaty, no demands. You will simply listen to what the humans want and report back to us. Krelvosh felt a mixture of relief and apprehension. And if they want something we cannot provide, then we will decide how to respond. But first, we must understand them. We have been treating humanity as a problem to be solved. Perhaps we should start treating them as a people to be understood. Ithani nodded slowly. That would be a good beginning. As the session ended and the delegates departed, Krelvosh approached the ancient historian. Do you truly believe partnership with humans is possible? I believe it is necessary. The galaxy is vast, Ambassador. There is room for more than one way of organizing civilizations. The Council has provided stability and prosperity for 12,000 years. But perhaps there are other approaches that could work equally well. Perhaps competition would improve both systems? That is a radical idea. Radical ideas become necessary when the old ones stop working. Yathani began floating toward the exit. Go to the humans, Ambassador. Listen to them. Try to understand why they would rather struggle alone than prosper under our guidance. The answer to that question may be the most important thing you ever learn. Krelvosh watched him go, then turned to prepare for his third journey to the Sol system. This time, everything would be different. This time, he would come not as a representative of a superior power, but as a student seeking knowledge. He only hoped it would be enough. Ambassador. Krelvosh's third journey to the Sol system felt different from the first two. His ship was smaller, a personal diplomatic yacht rather than an official vessel. He carried no guards, no assistants, no treaties. He was coming not as a representative of the Galactic Council's power, but as a messenger seeking understanding. The humans seemed to sense this change. When he arrived at the edge of their system, he was greeted not by warships, but by a simple escort that guided him toward their main space station. They called it Gateway Station, a massive structure orbiting at the edge of their inner system. It served as their primary interface with the galaxy beyond. Admiral Kevin Monroe met him personally at the docking bay. The gray-haired human looked exactly as he had during their confrontation months ago, calm and unshakable. But this time, his manner was warmer. Ambassador Krelvosh, I admit we're surprised you came back, especially alone. Krelvosh stepped carefully onto the deck, adjusting to the slightly lower gravity. As am I, Admiral. This visit is different from my previous ones, as I hear. No treaty this time? No treaty. I am here to listen. Monroe nodded slowly, studying the alien with obvious curiosity. Then let's talk. I'll give you a tour of the station first. Might help you understand us better. They walked together through the corridors of Gateway Station. Krelvosh observed everything carefully. Humans of every description went about their daily lives around them. Workers carried equipment. Families walked together, children running ahead while parents called after them. Vendors sold food from small stalls. Couples sat together in observation areas, watching the stars through massive windows. It looks like any station in council space, Krelvosh observed. Does that surprise you? Somewhat. I expected something more different, Monroe smiled. People are people, Ambassador. We eat, we work, we fall in love, we raise children. We're not so different from your species, I imagine. We just have different ideas about how society should be organized. They stopped at a large observation window overlooking Earth. The planet hung in space like a blue and green jewel, swirling with white clouds. Krelvosh had seen thousands of inhabited worlds in his long career, but something about this one struck him deeply. Perhaps it was the knowledge of what lived there. Perhaps it was simply the beauty of the view. May I speak candidly, Admiral? I'd prefer it. Krelvosh turned to face the human. The Council is afraid of you. Monroe did not seem surprised. We know. Not because of your weapons. Those are impressive, but we have faced military threats before. We are afraid because you represent something we cannot control. An alternative. We figured as much. That's why we've been so careful since your fleet left. No aggression. No expansion into claimed space. No attempts to recruit your member species. We're not trying to tear down what you've built. Monroe was quiet for a moment, looking at Earth. Out to be left alone. To develop at our own pace. To make our own mistakes and learn from them. To build our own future without anyone else telling us what that future should look like. But surely you recognize the benefits of council membership, the technology, the trade opportunities, the protection. We recognize them. We just don't think they're worth the price. Ellis? Monroe turned back to Krelvosh. Ambassador, let me ask you something. In 12,000 years of council rule, how much has galactic civilization advanced? Krelvosh considered the question. We have made steady progress in many areas. Steady progress. Not revolutionary progress. Not the kind of leaps that come from desperate need or fierce competition. Your species discovered faster than light travel. Then you shared it with everyone. Now no one has any reason to develop a better version because the current one works well enough. Your medicine has been essentially the same for millennia because it works well enough. Your social structures have been stable for so long that no one can even imagine alternatives. Stability is a virtue. Stability is comfortable. But comfort can become a trap. We've seen it in our own history. Civilizations that became too comfortable eventually collapsed because they forgot how to adapt to changing circumstances. Monroe's expression was serious now. We're young. We're primitive by your standards. But we're hungry. We're curious. We're driven to improve ourselves in ways your species stopped being driven thousands of years ago. Krelvosh felt something shift in his understanding. You believe you can surpass us. Maybe, maybe not, but we want the chance to try. And we think that trying is what matters, regardless of the outcome. They continued walking through the station. Monroe showed him engineering sections, research laboratories, training facilities. Everywhere Krelvosh looked, he saw humans working with intense focus. They were learning, building, experimenting. They were a species in motion, constantly changing. Your council has offered us shortcuts, Monroe said. Advanced technology, established trade routes, proven social systems. But shortcuts have costs. If we take your technology, we won't develop the understanding that comes from creating it ourselves. If we join your trade networks, we become dependent on structures we didn't build. If we adopt your social systems, we lose whatever unique insights our own development might produce. You would sacrifice prosperity for independence. Prosperity without independence isn't really prosperity. It's just comfortable imprisonment. They reached a private meeting room where other humans waited. Krelvosh recognized Commander Lisa Brennan from his first visit. Several others were new to him, apparently representing different aspects of human government and society. Commander Brennan stood as they entered. Ambassador, thank you for coming. We've been hoping for another opportunity to explain our position. I am here to listen, Krelvosh said, settling into a chair designed for species of his type. Please help me understand. What followed was the most illuminating conversation of Krelvosh's long life. The humans explained their history, their values, their dreams for the future. They spoke of centuries of struggle against tyranny in their own species. They described revolutions fought for abstract principles like freedom and equality. They told stories of individuals who had sacrificed everything rather than submit to control. We are not naive, Commander Brennan said. We know the galaxy is dangerous. We know there are species out there who would destroy us if they could, but we would rather face those dangers as free beings than survive as subjects of someone else's empire. Krelvosh found himself moved in ways he had not expected. These humans were so young, so primitive in many ways, but their passion was undeniable. Their determination was absolute. What would you accept? He asked finally. If not the treaty we offered, what kind of relationship would you want with the Council? Monroe and Brennan exchanged glances. Something unprecedented, Monroe said. A mutual non-aggression pact. Recognition of our sovereignty. No integration requirements. No oversight. Just two civilizations acknowledging each other's right to exist. Council has never agreed to such terms with any species. Then maybe it's time for new precedents. Krelvosh made a decision that he knew would alter galactic history. I am going to recommend this to the Council. They will likely reject it initially, but I will continue to advocate for it. Why? Commander Brennan asked. You have nothing to gain from this, because I have learned something important today. Krelvosh looked at each human in turn. The Council's greatest strength has always been unity. We assumed that one system was best for everyone, but perhaps we were wrong. Perhaps the galaxy is large enough for more than one approach. He stood, preparing to leave. I cannot promise success. The Council is ancient and resistant to change, but I will try. Admiral Monroe extended his hand. Krelvosh had learned this gesture of friendship and returned it, wrapping his tentacle gently around the human's fingers. Thank you, Ambassador, Monroe said. Do not thank me yet. The hardest work is still ahead. Negotiations that followed lasted 10 years. Krelvosh returned to the council with his recommendation and faced fierce opposition. Delegate Vrax called him a traitor. Trade Minister Velkorath warned of economic collapse. General Dexarn expressed concerns about security, but slowly, painfully, attitudes began to shift. The humans continued their careful policy of non-aggression while building their own network of alliances with non-council species. Each year, more civilizations joined what they called the Free Worlds Alliance, a loose federation that offered partnership without integration. Eventually, the council had to choose between permanent conflict and acceptance of a new reality. The Treaty of Sol, as it came to be known, was signed exactly 10 years after Krelvosh's third visit. It was the first agreement the Galactic Council had ever signed between equals. It established boundaries, prohibited aggression from either side, and recognized the right of humanity to develop without external interference. Humanity never did join the Council. Within 3 centuries, their Free Worlds Alliance rivaled the Council in size and influence. The two great powers competed peacefully, each one driving the other to improve. Galactic civilization advanced more in those 300 years than it had in the previous 12,000. Ambassador Krelvosh lived long enough to see it all. He often thought about what Commander Lisa Brennan had told him during those first negotiations so many years ago. "You've built something impressive," she had said, "but you built it by making everyone the same. We're going to build something different. Something that celebrates what makes each species unique." "That sounds chaotic," he had replied. "It probably will be, but it will be ours." She had been right. The Free Worlds Alliance was chaotic, messy, and unpredictable. But it was also vibrant, creative, and dynamic in ways the Council could never match. Krelvosh spent his final years writing a history of these events. He titled it simply, "The Humans Who Said No." It became required reading throughout the galaxy, studied by diplomats and historians for generations to come. In the end, humanity's greatest contribution to galactic civilization was not any technology or resource. It was the simple, powerful idea that freedom was worth any price, and that sometimes the best thing a civilization could do was simply refuse to give in.